Molly stood at the front door of the townhouse, watching as her husband, Philip, got into his Jaguar XJ. She waved and blew him a kiss. Philip smiled, waved back, then reversed out of the driveway and headed to the airport for his flight to New York City. Leaning contentedly against the doorframe, Molly took in the pleasant South Florida morning. The air was still cool, but the heat would soon rise. Their small front yard was bright with lantana and pentas, while two stunning bougainvilleas framed the door and its little porch. The fragrance of the flowers filled the air, and butterflies fluttered from one bloom to the next. Molly, a striking 30-year-old with auburn hair, had a vibrant personality and a strong, independent streak. She worked as a copy editor for a publishing company, focusing mostly on romance novels and other fiction geared toward women. Thanks to modern technology, she could work from home, so she had transformed the townhouse's second bedroom into a practical and efficient office space. Philip and Molly had now been married for 7 years. Philip was 19 years older than Molly. Her family and friends were initially shocked by the age difference when they got married, but as Molly explained to her younger sister and a few close female friends, the benefit of being with an older man was their patience and experience as lovers, knowing how to truly satisfy a woman, unlike some of the young men her age she had been with before. After all, everyone knows that aged wine is far better and richer in taste than new wine. It didn't hurt that Philip was extremely wealthy. He came from old Northern money and, naturally, had a Harvard education. He had turned a family fortune into an even greater one through his successful international electronics business. While Molly wasn't a gold digger, it didn't hurt to recognize the silver linings that potential suitors might bring along. Molly had left the impoverished coal country of Kentucky for South Florida, seeking education and opportunities that were scarce back home. She found both. Philip had noticed the beautiful young woman waiting tables at a nightclub while she was finishing her graduate degree in English at a local university. In the mysterious ways of love, he became enamored, and soon after, they were married. In the end, Molly was a young woman, happily married, enjoying both a fulfilling career and a life of comfort. During the late winter and spring months, she and her husband resided in their townhouse in Florida. In the heat of the summer, and through fall until New Year's, they moved to their larger primary residence in the North Carolina mountains near Highlands, a grand estate with full-time staff and all the luxuries of the affluent. Their Florida townhouse was a secluded retreat meant only for them. Philip's business often required him to travel 1 or 2 times a month, with trips lasting 3 to 5 days, sometimes longer. This wasn't an issue for Molly, as she kept herself busy with her work, several hobbies, and her passion for fitness. The townhouse was just 2 blocks from the beach, and within half a mile there was a STRP of upscale shops, restaurants, bars, and nightclubs offering live entertainment. When Philip was in town, they often enjoyed going out together, and when he wasn't, Molly had no problem going on her own. After all, she was a modern woman. As Molly watched her husband leave for the airport, she thought of what a good man and wonderful husband he was. In return, she considered herself a devoted and loyal wife. Well, maybe that was a slight exaggeration. Molly was certainly devoted to Philip, and together they were a striking couple. But she was also a young, vibrant, and attractive woman, while Philip was from an older generation. Such a mix can sometimes lead to complicated situations. Several years ago, Molly began to succumb to the allure of temptation in Philip's absence. Perhaps over the years she had wandered off once or twice. No, that doesn't quite capture it. It was probably more than that. Let's just say she was a sociable woman with a rather relaxed sense of morality and a healthy appetite for physical pleasures, and leave it at that. In the past, a husband had full ownership of his wife and her physical charms. In today's world, however, a husband's rights to his wife's body are more like a lease than outright ownership. So, when the lessee, Philip in this case, wasn't around, it seemed only practical for the lessor, Molly, to sublet her assets to another man in his absence. One could even argue that Molly's infidelities were simply the actions of a savvy woman making the most of her valuable resources, which were in high demand. In truth, Molly was just a young, spoiled woman who occasionally indulged in a bit of fun and excitement without any deep intentions behind it. Philip was a worldly, well-educated man with a sharp business sense. He was a realist and held no illusions. He knew that as soon as he left, men would make advances toward his attractive young wife, and that Molly would be tempted by younger men her own age. How could she not be? It's an age-old story, both in fiction and reality. Philip understood that his wife was like a Ferrari. There was no point in keeping such a treasure locked away. A Ferrari is meant to race freely on open roads. If one wanted to enjoy the thrill of driving such a beautiful machine, one had to accept that there might be a few speeding tickets along the way. Philip was lenient when it came to his wife's potential indiscretions. They never had an explicit agreement, but he was mindful of his actions, and she was discreet. Philip always informed Molly of his schedule and made sure never to come home unexpectedly. Above all, he didn't pry into her affairs. Molly, for the most part, kept her flings limited to the times when Philip was away. These encounters also mostly occurred while they were in South Florida. Back in North Carolina, there were too many friends, family, and servants around to risk any scandal. But in South Florida, far from their usual social circle and surrounded by tourists and snowbirds, opportunities were abundant and easily within reach for a young, attractive woman like Molly. Molly glanced down the street toward the beach and saw Andre walking briskly, right on time. He was a slim, dark-haired, charming man around her age. She waved enthusiastically and smiled warmly, and Andre waved back. Last year, Andre had asked Molly to dance at a nightclub, and their friendship quickly grew from there. He was Parisian and clearly well off, as he took a month-long vacation every spring in South Florida. He owned a large beach house just a few blocks from Molly's townhouse, and they would occasionally meet there when Philip was away and Andre was in town. Today, Andre was coming to her, eager to reconnect after being away for a while. He had just arrived yesterday and called shortly after getting in, thrilled to learn that her husband had left that morning. A thrill of excitement ran through Molly. Andre embodied the exotic, mysterious allure of a foreign visitor. His accented English always made their conversations feel intriguing. She appreciated the friendship and connection with him. It was different from what she had with her husband, but she cherished both. As Andre stepped onto the porch, Molly greeted him warmly, inviting him inside. They exchanged a quick embrace, and Molly led Andre upstairs to the master bedroom, where they sat and caught up, reminiscing about the previous year. Their connection felt natural and easy, and they enjoyed each other's company in a comfortable and familiar way. Suddenly, a footstep echoed on the stairs, followed by a fateful voice. "Honey?" In her conversation with Andre, Molly had missed the sound of her husband's car pulling up, the beep of the automatic lock, and the front door opening. The most feared moment of their illicit affair had arrived. The unsuspecting husband had walked in on the scene unexpectedly. Andre's head jerked up from between Molly's legs, his eyes wide with panic. From Molly's vantage point, looking down her slender frame at him, Andre resembled a startled groundhog emerging from its burrow to assess a sudden danger. The looming disaster of her husband's imminent arrival left no room for hesitation. Otherwise, Molly might have burst into laughter at the absurd sight of Andre, frozen in fear between her thighs. Andre whispered urgently, "Your husband!" At the same moment, Molly breathed, "My husband!" Philip's deep voice echoed up the stairs. "Sweetheart, the airline just texted that my flight was canceled. I'm on a later flight now." The adulterous couple sprang out of bed as they heard Philip's slow, deliberate steps ascending the stairs. Each footfall felt like the approach of inevitable doom. Andre gripped Molly's arm and whispered frantically, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" He was in a panic, and Molly knew he had every reason to be. A husband discovering another man in his wife's bed often reacts violently, with his rage typically directed at the intruder. Philip's strong, athletic physique had been one of the things that drew Molly to him. He had even been a fairly successful heavyweight in the Harvard Boxing Club in his younger days. Andre, on the other hand, was more of an intellectual, inclined toward poetry and art rather than sports. It would hardly be a fair fight, despite the difference in their ages. There were few options: either face Philip and plead for mercy, or hide Andre. Molly, sensing the gravity of the situation, took control like a seasoned general trying to prevent a disastrous defeat. Philip was already too far up the stairs for Andre to slip away to her second bedroom office unnoticed. Both the closet and the bathroom could offer temporary concealment, but neither provided a safe spot if Philip decided to check. The antique bed had about a 30-inch clearance, and the quilt nearly touched the floor, perhaps enough to hide him. Molly shoved Andre toward the bed and whispered urgently, "Get under the bed. Slide to the far side and stay still, no matter what." Andre didn't waste a second. He threw himself to the floor, but a dull thud echoed as he hit his head on the bed's iron rail. Groaning, Andre paused for a moment, clutching his forehead. Molly gave him a nudge with her foot on his bare backside, pushing him forward with a desperate whisper, "For heaven's sake, move faster." Andre scrambled with renewed urgency, clawing his way under the bed. The last thing Molly saw was his legs and bare backside vanishing under it in a frantic rush. This is turning into some kind of vaudeville sketch, or worse, a tangled Shakespearean comedy, Molly thought. She quickly smoothed the quilt over the bed where they had tousled it moments before. Spinning around, she gathered their discarded clothes and shoes scattered on the bedroom floor. She dashed into the bathroom and stuffed everything into the laundry hamper. She called out, "I'm in the bathroom, honey." Just getting a bath ready. With that, Molly turned on the faucet for the soaking tub. She often indulged in long, luxurious baths with a trashy novel in hand, so it was a believable excuse for her state of undress. Rushing back into the bedroom, she scanned for any clues that might betray Andre's presence to her husband. There, one of Andre's shoes had escaped her quick sweep of clothes. In a panic, she kicked it under the bed, her soccer skills from high school kicking in. Maybe she kicked a bit too hard, though, as a startled grunt rose from beneath the bed. Walking toward the bedroom door more composed than she actually felt, Molly feigned calmness and asked, "What did you say happened to your flight? Is everything all right, darling?" Philip was entering the bedroom, his tall, muscular figure perfectly framed in his sharp brioni suit, radiating confidence and masculinity. "Yes, this is the man I married, and for good reason," Molly reminded herself. "Oh no, nothing's wrong. The airline texted me while I was on my way to the airport saying my flight was canceled, but they rebooked me on a later one. I sent you a—" Philip froze in his tracks, staring at the unexpected sight of his beautiful, Nakdi wife gazing at him with her sparkling hazel eyes. That sparkle, perhaps, was a mix of amusement, excitement, or maybe even fear, possibly a blend of all three. I wasn't expecting such a warm welcome home. Anyway, as I was saying, I texted you that I was coming back and suggested we have a coffee with one of those amazing blueberry muffins you baked this morning." Among her many talents, Molly was an excellent cook. She loved preparing meals and treats for Philip. Molly struck a playful pose, one hand on her hip as she leaned slightly, teasing him. "Ah, I left my phone downstairs and didn't see the message. I was about to enjoy a nice bath before starting my editing work today," she added with a flirty tone. "But I suppose I could be convinced to delay that for coffee and muffins with my husband." Turning, Molly walked back into the bathroom to turn off the tub faucet, calling over her shoulder, "And how much time do you have, darling?" As Molly reached for her robe hanging on the bathroom door, strong arms suddenly encircled her, and Philip playfully lifted her off the ground. He carried his laughing, squirming wife over to the bed and gently placed her down. Holding her in place with one hand, He began undressing while she playfully wriggled free, though she had no real intention of avoiding the moment. Philip chuckled. "You little tease. Just enough time for a moment with my wife before breakfast." Meanwhile, Andre, filled with panic, lay still under the bed. He had seen Philip out with Molly several times last year and knew that any confrontation would not end well. He forced himself to remain motionless. From under the bed, Andre could hear everything exchanged between the couple. He saw Philip's clothes drop to the floor and watched as his shoes were kicked aside. The sound of Molly's voice and the sight of her husband's feet reminded Andre of the situation he had found himself in just moments before. The bed began to move rhythmically, and the sounds above made Andre grow concerned that the old bed frame might not withstand the activity. The creaking of the bed and the laughter of the couple filled the room. Finally, the moment passed, and the couple sat on the edge of the bed, catching their breath. Molly, still smiling, said, "Oh my, I'm so glad that flight got canceled." Relieved that the bed had withstood the strain, Andre remained quiet. He watched as the couple headed toward the bathroom. Molly nudged Philip towards the shower, instructing, "Take a quick shower and get ready. I'll make some fresh coffee." Molly grabbed her robe from the bathroom door and slipped it on. She blew a kiss to her husband as he stepped into the shower and then returned to the bedroom. With a playful gleam in her eye, Molly tiptoed to the bedside, dropped to her knees, and peered underneath. She stifled a laugh with her hand as she saw Andre, frozen beneath the bed, caught in the most unexpected of circumstances. The sheer absurdity of the situation almost made her giggle out loud. A nasty yellow-blue bruise was forming on Andre's forehead from hitting the bed frame, and his right eye was beginning to blacken due to the blow from the shoe. "Oh, you poor thing," Molly whispered softly. She pressed a finger to her lips and murmured, "Shh, don't move. The floors creak. He'll hear you downstairs. I'll come get you when it's safe." Andre nodded in understanding. Molly stood up, gathered Philip's clothes from the floor, and returned them to him in the bathroom. Then she quietly made her way downstairs. A few minutes later, Philip finished his shower, got dressed, and also headed downstairs. Andre stayed perfectly still, not wanting to confront Philip in his own home. As he lay stiffly in his cramped hiding spot, he could hear the pleasant tones of Molly's voice, occasionally joined by Philip's deeper voice and their shared laughter as they enjoyed coffee and muffins together downstairs. They sat directly beneath where Molly's frustrated and bruised lover remained hidden. Finally, Molly checked her watch and said, "Honey, this has been wonderful. But if you're going to make your flight, you need to get going." Philip sighed. "You're right. It really has been wonderful, but I need to get on the road." They shared a warm kiss at the door, and Molly watched her charming husband drive away for the second time that morning. As she turned to head upstairs, her phone dinged with an incoming message from the side table near the door. Molly opened her messaging app. There were 2 messages from Philip, the old one about the canceled flight and his early return home, and a new one that had just come in. The latest message read, "Thanks for a great morning, don't have too much fun without me today," followed by a winking face emoji. Molly sat on the stairs, an enigmatic smile playing on her lips as she thoughtfully stared at the text on her phone. Andre, like the obedient boy he was, remained hidden under the bed, waiting for her signal. He could wait a little longer. She needed to reflect. Could her husband possibly know about Andre? The mention of fun and the winking emoji made her suspicious. But then again, it could be entirely innocent. It wasn't clear how Philip could have figured out Andre's presence. Yet she knew Philip was no fool. In fact, he could rival Sherlock Holmes in deductive skills. Had he deliberately chosen that moment right over her lover for amusement or revenge? Or was it all just coincidence? Who knew what Philip's brilliant mind had deduced about the morning? Molly had often wondered whether her husband had vague suspicions about her occasional dalliances beyond the marriage. She appreciated his apparent tolerance, his patience with her indiscretions, and she always tried to keep things discreet to avoid embarrassing him. She sat there for several minutes, lost in thought. Philip truly was a one-in-a-million husband. He was older, and there were clear advantages and disadvantages to that. In Philip's case, the positives certainly outweighed the negatives. Still, she reminded herself grimly, other wives with husbands closer to their age would have many more years together than she would have with Philip. Maybe it was time to mature and take this marriage more seriously. Molly quickly typed a message to her husband. Change of plans, dear. Need to take out some trash and then pack. Catching the afternoon flight to NYC. Tell the Four Seasons staff your wife will be joining you for the stay. She ended it with the same winky face emoji he had sent her. And from that point on, only Philip drove the hot, lively Ferrari, and there were no more speeding tickets.